Hello, hello, hello. Before we can get into 8.4, we have to do some factor review. You're excited, I know. First, when we have just two terms here, so two terms, one, oopsie daisy, 1, 2. We first have to see, do they have anything in common that we can take out? Well, we do have something in common. Both these two terms have a factor of 4 in common, and they both have an x in common. Remember, when you're factoring something out of the two terms, it's like you're dividing each of these by 4x. So it's like, what do you have left inside of there? Well, 8 divided by 4 is 2, so I would still have a 2 left. And if I took out one of my x's, I would still have an x right here. Subtract. When I took out the 4x, this does not just disappear. 4x divided by 4x, remember whenever you have something the same on top and bottom, that would be a 1. So this would be factoring if I have two terms and they have something in common I can take out. Here reviewing, now I have three terms, I can't take anything out, but that's always your first question you should ask yourself is there something I can take out? I can't. When I have three terms, I have to try to break it up into two binomials. Now this one has a number in front, so I have to think my factors of 3 are 3 and 1. And I look at my factors of c. So remember, this is A, B, C. So you look at your factors of A, you look at your factors of C. My only two factors for C are 2 and 1. Now this is where you have to guess and check. One thing that I noticed, this is a positive, so two numbers that multiply to get a positive, but they have to add together to get a negative. So since that's the case, both of these should be negative, because a negative 2 times a negative 1 will give me a positive 2, but when I add them together, I'm probably going to have a negative number. So I'm just going to guess and check. So I'm going to put my 3x, my 1x here, so splitting up my A, and I'm going to put my minus 2, minus 1 here. So again, here's me guessing, checking. You want to check your outside and inside. So this first one, 3x times negative 1, is a negative 3x. The inside here would be a negative 2x. And when I add those together, I get a negative 5x. So this is me guessing, checking. Now if I want to see it, does that equal that? Nope. So I have to try to guess and check something else. So I'm going to again leave my 3x and 1x here. I'm going to flip-flop my other two that I have. So I'm going to put my negative 1 in my first parentheses, my negative 2 in my second. So guessing, checking. So my outside would give me a negative 6x. If I can write negative 6x, my inside would give me a negative 1x, and when I add those together, I get a negative 7. And now looking at that, that's the same as this one. So this would be my answer. This is review from last semester. Guess and check. So that would be my final answer when I factor that. Same type of thing. First I look, is there anything that these all have in common I can take out? No. So now I have to factor into my two parentheses again, just like the last problem. This one's a little bit easier because I notice that there's no number for my a value. So since there's no value for my a value, I know I can just split up my x squared to just my two x's. Now I'm looking at my negative 20. I'm looking at two numbers that multiply to get negative 20. So if I write down all of my factors of 20, one thing, because it's a negative 20, I have to make sure that one of the two numbers should be negative. Now when I'm looking at this, they also have to add together to get this positive 1. That means my larger number should be positive. So when I put my negatives with my factors over here, I'm going to put them with a negative number. So if I were to add these together, this would give me a 19, this one gives me 8, and this gives me 1. So these are the two factors that work. They multiply to get negative 20, but add together to get that 1. Again, that 1's in the middle. So one parenthesis should have a minus 4, the other one should have a plus 5. And that's my answer. And the last review problem that we have here, two terms, just like that first question we had. However, now there's nothing I can take out here. There's nothing in common I can take out, but I should still try to lower this x squared. So I could also write this like this, because this term basically doesn't show up. So now I still am going to have my two parentheses. So I still break up my x squared into my x values. Now I'm looking for two numbers that would multiply to get negative 64, add together to get 0. Now something that's nice and special about the 64, it's a perfect square. What does that mean? That means two numbers that multiply the same number, one should be positive, one should be negative. Now if I guess and check, this would give me a negative 8x, this gives me a positive 8x. Negative 8x plus positive 8x gives me that 0x value. So that would be my answer. And that is review factoring. Make sure you're asking questions if you have them. Have a great day.